Alright, today we're going to pick up on Oblique 1.3, and I'm going to show you how we're going to walk through. We're going to complete all the blank shapes, and then we're going to pick one of these three to enlarge. And the first step we're going to do is just begin by outlining our shapes and then creating the basic subdivisions of the shape to find out information that we don't have explicitly shown here. So I'm going to do my usual outline. Notice I'm not sketching, in the sense that I'd rather you not be doing this. I want a clean line. So we're completing the whole shape. Now the next step, this is just the triangle, so we just drew this triangular shape here, or trapezoidal shape rather. It's kind of trapezoidal component. So we're going to now take and subdivide to find out where this is found. How do we find that? So in order to do that, we're going to kind of create some guidelines. We're going to create a subdivided plane or line in the middle at the same angle. These are parallel. So I'm going to make a light line in that direction. Then on either side, if we look at the halfway point between the line, on either side of there we have a short horizontal line, right, or depth line. So we could say this point and this point. Now, before we go too much further, we want to look at what happens on the base of the object. Well, the same distance we went here, we go up, okay, then we go over, then we go up some more, which is the same width, or depth rather, the depth of this opening, and then we go up to match this line here. So we're going to take this over, and mine's going to look a little different, but that's okay. You'll see why. As long as you create these series of rules, you'll be fine. Now once we've made that outline, we need to add in our angles, our parallel lines, to complete the shape on the outside, right? I just made this shape. Then we do our horizontal line here, connect the final point there, and don't forget about this little guy right there. That little line gives us the information that this object has an opening. So now we've made all these cluster of lines, but we need to come back and clarify it with our black pen or our heavier pencil. So I'm just going to fill in. And you'll notice mine does look a little bit different, but the purpose is all of my lines are parallel in their depth, height, and width. So you'll end up with something like that. Now we take an even heavier pencil or pen, and we darken the outer edge of the entire object. This helps it pop off the page, makes your illustration, your drawing look a little more technical. So we'll move on to the next one. I'm going to go ahead and move on to this big one here. We're going to duplicate this bottom one. So the first thing, once again, we take our light pencil, light pen, and we make our outer edges. Now I'm going through this fast because I've been drawing for a very long time, but it's important that you guys take your time to do these in clean, consistent lines. If you make a mistake, erase and come back. Okay, now we've drawn a basic outline. We want to come in and add in these inner rectangles, right? These are inside. But before we go too far, let's split this side, right? Because now the depth is being shown in this direction. We're going to split this face of our rectangular prism in half so that we can come back and add an offset, which is what this is called, this little offset. It's a rectangle within a rectangle. So I'm going to split the difference between these two with a very light line. Remember, that line should be vertical as well, in the same way that these are vertical. Now we're going to take and start creating the smaller shapes inside. This is where you want to take your time to try and draw parallel. And we'll also do one on the bottom. And finally, we'll do the sides. You'll see when I come back, this line, we need to straighten that one out a little bit. Parallel. That one got a little squirrely. We're going to straighten it back out. This is why I'm using a light pen or a red pen, because I'll come back in a second and make it stronger. Now let's add our depth lines. The depth lines first are parallel to this angle, right, which is roughly 30. So we're going to add that angle in there. Then we're going to add this horizontal line. And you'll see how if I do pick up my pen, I put it back at where I stopped. I try not to sketch. If you have to turn your paper, that's fine. Okay, then we add our vertical at the intersection. Notice how I kind of trace another line so that my hand draws the parallel version. Okay, now we've got our basic outline, so let's darken in what matters. This is where I start turning my paper a little more. And if you turn your paper, it may help you draw more parallel lines. Don't forget about that corner. Notice how I stop, and you don't want to go straight right there. There's not a horizontal line connecting the bottom of the shape. we'll take and darken our outer edge. Notice how I turn my paper and my hand motion is still pretty much the same. This keeps a good consistent line weight. Now we'll move on to the F. The F is going to be a little tricky, and I'll show you why. We're going to go ahead and block in everything that we see here. Let's just darken in our outline shape first. Now, the next thing we want to do is we're going to first just create our little window opening here on the side. And we're going to make sure those lines stay as parallel as we can keep them. Okay, that's the first part. Next part is we want to draw the F on the top of the shape here. So we're going to bring in, come down a little, make our mark over, down a little, make our mark over, so we've created the top part of the F, right? And you could do these by also creating these kind of subdivisions across here if you'd like, right? We're creating bands similar to what we did on the front face. Now we want to show this face of the F. We want to show that back leg. Well, in order to find that, we're going to do some lines that project back at that angle, that same angle, and then we project a line down till we hit that line. Okay, and then we measure over. We do the same there. So now we blocked out the other back side of the F. Let's look at this window. Well, when you show the depth of the window, we've already gone backwards. Now we want to create these little legs, right? This little window sill. That's the bottom part of a window. Okay, now we can go ahead and take our pen, darken in what matters, or your heavy pencil. Showing that part of the F. Notice if I'm not turning the paper, I'm rotating my hand. But let's keep moving the paper around. And now we do our shading. This is where you want to take your time to make parallel horizontal lines. And then we're almost done. And now on the window side, we want to create parallel diagonal lines that follow the angle of the window as shown. Okay, Now to duplicate the last one, we're going to duplicate this shape here on the bottom. You're going to go ahead and outline everything we have shown. Notice how I'm switching back and forth between 2 to 3 pencils. This all starts with one big shape. Then what they did is they subdivided it by adding this middle portion here and this middle portion here. And then we fill in the remainder, right, which are these depth lines that we'll use momentarily. Okay, so this one's tricky, because what you're going to kind of need to do on this one is we're going to need to show some hidden lines to help us out a little bit. So we're going to show the back edges of the rectangular prism, which we haven't really been doing. So I'm going to project some light dotted lines. Get my horizontal lines. Okay. And then connect my diagonal line. So now I've created the back of that shape. But let's go ahead and finish out these hidden lines. I'm just connecting to make this look like a cube rectangular prism inside of a rectangular prism. So now we've made these kind of 3D rectangular prisms. So this is going to help us because we need to go ahead and create that little ribbon on the inside of our shape. And this is going to be interesting how we do this, but you'll see. We're going to follow along. This is basically an M, right? It's an M shape with a little dip in the bottom. So let's go ahead and we're going to create an M shape. We're going to go ahead and draw a vertical line up. And then we're going to come back down to close that shape off, except we want to add this leg. So this leg actually comes over right? We're actually coming over and creating another shape here. Alright, now we've made a rough outline, but let's outline that a little bit darker so you can see clearly what we're trying to show and duplicate. We're going to duplicate this over. That's why a light pencil is important, because if we were to be using heavy pencils the whole time, imagine all the confusion we could have in this shape. Oh, I got a little squirrely. And then we connect these. So now we've made a clean front shape. And that's where this next step comes in. This next step is going to come in where we're going to project our depth lines. So let's go ahead and do that. Notice I'm projecting off all the corners. And then I'll connect those. And now I'm going to project off the corners I've created here and here. Notice they're parallel to the hidden lines we made earlier. Now we've created our basic shape and we do our darkened outline. Darken our outline. And there you have 1.3, right? Taking your time, using a couple different pencil leads. And now the next step we're going to do is we're going to enlarge this big letter F onto our sheet that we started earlier, or a new title block for yourself. I'm going to do it on an existing title block, but you'll